January 21st, 1961, 11:14 p.m. The 500 Club, Atlantic City, New Jersey. The night before, John Fitzgerald Kennedy had placed his right hand on a Bible in 20-degree Washington cold and told the world that the torch had been passed. The newspapers were still running the speech on their front pages. Ask not what your country can do for you. The country was feeling something, hope, maybe, or the particular electricity that runs through a people when they believe, however briefly, that the best version of themselves is still available. None of that has reached the 500 Club. The 500 Club smells like it always smells: cigarette smoke, bourbon, gardenia perfume, and the particular atmospheric residue of a room where important decisions have been made badly for 20 years. It is not an elegant place. It has never pretended to be an elegant place. It is a place of function, a place where men who need to be seen together can be seen together, where conversations can happen in the specific privacy of a room full of witnesses who know better than to remember what they heard. Tonight, the 500 Club is more full than usual because the country has just inaugurated a new president, and the men in this room, many of whom worked very hard for that outcome, in ways that will never appear in any history book, feel that a celebration is warranted. They are not wrong, exactly. They did work hard. The work is simply not the kind that gets acknowledged in public. 207 people are present. They range from household names to men whose names you will never hear spoken in a room where the conversation might be recorded. At the center table, the table that is always the center table regardless of where it is placed, because its occupant makes it so by virtue of his proximity to it, sits Salvatore "Black Sam" Benedetto. Salvatore Benedetto is 57 years old. He runs the Philadelphia, South Jersey operation with the particular combination of methodical brutality and administrative competence that has kept him alive and solvent for 30 years. He is not a flashy man. He dresses well, but not extravagantly. He does not take up more physical space than necessary. He has the face of a retired schoolteacher and the eyes of a man who has learned that the most important information about any situation is always the information nobody is offering voluntarily. He has been running his organization since 1947, when his predecessor retired to Florida under circumstances that did not involve a choice. He has survived 3 federal investigations, 1 Senate subcommittee appearance, 2 assassination attempts, and 1 marriage of 41 years that has outlasted every other relationship in his life. He does not consider himself a cruel man. He considers himself a practical man, a man who has learned that the world runs on rules, and that the maintenance of those rules sometimes requires demonstrations. He has requested, through the appropriate channels, that Frank Sinatra perform at the 500 Club tonight. He did not ask. He requested. The distinction matters. Men like Benedetto do not ask. They make it understood that something is desired, and the mechanisms of obligation and mutual history take care of the rest. Sinatra has performed at the 500 Club before, 3 times in fact, stretching back to 1953. The relationship between entertainers of Sinatra's generation and the men who run clubs like the 500 Club is complicated and well documented and entirely irrelevant to the purposes of this story, except insofar as it explains why Frank Sinatra, who performed last night for the President of the United States at the inaugural gala, is performing tonight at a club in Atlantic City for a man who runs Philadelphia's streets. The short answer: obligation has many faces, and Frank Sinatra has never been a man who walks away from an obligation. Even when the obligation is dressed in a brown suit and sitting at a center table with 2 bodyguards. He has been backstage since 10:30. He is performing at 11:30. He is, at 11:14 p.m., in the small backstage room that the 500 Club provides for its performers, a room that is essentially a large closet with a mirror, going through the set with his piano player, Bill Miller. He is wearing a midnight blue tuxedo. He has a glass of Jack Daniels. He is in good spirits, actually. The inaugural gala was one of the defining professional events of his life, and the energy of it is still with him, a kind of residual electricity. He has spent the afternoon celebrating with Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. at a suite in the Ritz-Carlton. He is loose and warm and fully present. At 11:14 p.m., the backstage door opens. The man who enters is not a club employee. He is one of Benedetto's people, a large man named Carmine Russo, who serves as the primary communication channel between Benedetto and the people Benedetto needs to communicate with. Carmine is not unpleasant, exactly, but he has the specific energy of a man who has spent 20 years delivering messages from a powerful person to less powerful people and has internalized the hierarchy of that relationship. He does not knock. He opens the door. He looks at Frank Sinatra. Sal wants to change the set list. A pause. Bill Miller stops playing. Sal wants, Sinatra says, not as a question. He wants my way first, not second, and he wants you to do the Sinatra-Martin thing you did at the inaugural last night. He saw it on the news. Frank Sinatra looks at Carmine Russo for a moment. He looks at Bill Miller. He looks back at Carmine Russo. The set is the set, Sinatra says. Quiet, even, entirely clear. Carmine Russo blinks. This is not the response he was expecting. This is not, in his experience, the response people give when Salvatore Benedetto makes a request. Mr. Sinatra, tell Sal the set is the set. Tell him I'm glad he's here tonight. Carmine Russo stands in the doorway for 3 seconds, then he leaves. Bill Miller looks at Sinatra. Sinatra picks up his glass of Jack Daniels. He takes a measured sip. He sets the glass down. Bill, he says, from night and day, like we rehearsed. Yes, Frank, this is the first act. The second act begins 16 minutes later, when Sinatra walks onto the stage and Salvatore Benedetto does what he does. To understand what happens at 11:30 p.m. on January 21st, 1961, you need to understand the specific grammar of rooms like the 500 Club, the unspoken rules, the architecture of power, the way authority is communicated and confirmed and occasionally challenged in the rooms where the men who run certain American cities have their celebrations. The rule in these rooms is simple. The host is acknowledged. It is not a complicated rule. It does not require explanation. You are in a man's room, eating his food, drinking his liquor, on his ground. You acknowledge that, not elaborately, not with ceremony, but visibly and on his terms. Frank Sinatra has played these rooms many times. He understands the rule. He does not, as a general practice, resent the rule. It is simply the native grammar of a world he has moved through since he was playing clubs in Hoboken at 17, since he was the skinny kid from the wrong side of the river who needed the men with the money to give him the stage. But Sinatra also understands something that Salvatore Benedetto, for all his 30 years of operational excellence, has never fully grasped. There is a version of the rule that is about respect, and there is a version that is about submission. And they look identical from the outside, but they are entirely different things from the inside. One is an acknowledgement between equals of different kinds. The other is a declaration of hierarchy. Salvatore Benedetto intends a declaration of hierarchy. This is his mistake. Not tactically, he has made the calculation correctly in terms of his own world's arithmetic. He is more powerful in conventional terms than Frank Sinatra. He controls streets and supplies and the various commercial arrangements that keep Atlantic City running at the levels at which it runs. He has judges and policemen and city councilmen in his architecture. He has 30 years of demonstrated willingness to do what is necessary, but he has made the mistake of thinking that his kind of power is the only kind, that the room they are sharing tonight is his room and his room alone. It is not. It is also Frank Sinatra's room, because among the 207 people in the 500 Club tonight, there are 2 union representatives whose organizations span New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, 1 record company regional executive, 1 newspaper entertainment editor whose column is read by 400,000 people twice a week, 1 television producer whose network produces 3 primetime hours a week, and 14 people in the entertainment industry whose professional trajectories are, in ways both obvious and subtle, influenced by their relationship to Frank Sinatra. Benedetto's power runs through streets. Sinatra's power runs through every other system simultaneously. Benedetto has never had to reckon with the second kind. He is about to. At 11:30 p.m., the lights in the 500 Club dim. The MC, a local comedian named Terry Walsh, who has been doing this for 15 years, steps to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, the 500 Club is proud to present, direct from the presidential inaugural gala in Washington, D.C., Mr. Frank Sinatra. The room rises. Not all of it. The center table does not rise, because Benedetto does not rise for performers, and because his people do not do what Benedetto does not do. But the room rises. The applause is genuine and warm, and carries the specific energy of 200 people who know they are about to witness something they will describe for the rest of their lives. Frank Sinatra walks onto the stage. He is magnificent. This is not hyperbole. He is 45 years old and at the peak of a career that has already been declared over twice and resurrected twice, and is now, in January of 1961, at a level of artistic and commercial achievement that will not be equaled by anyone in his field for another generation. He stands at the microphone, and the room simply reorganizes itself around him, the way a room does when the thing it was always supposed to contain finally arrives. He smiles at the crowd. He looks at the center table. He raises his glass. And Salvatore Benedetto, at the center table, does not raise his. He does something worse. He turns to Carmine Russo and says something, inaudible from the stage, but clearly not about Sinatra, clearly a private continuation of whatever conversation he was having before the MC spoke. He does not look at the stage. He does not acknowledge the man who has just been introduced. He makes Frank Sinatra invisible, in front of 200 people, in the specific language of this specific world. Salvatore Benedetto has just said, "You are beneath my acknowledgement. You perform. I watch." There is no other dynamic here. The room feels it. The room holds its breath in the specific way of people watching someone touch a hot stove. The second before the burn registers, when the outcome is already determined, but the sensation hasn't arrived yet. Frank Sinatra stands at the microphone. He smiles. Not the stage smile. Something quieter and more specific than the stage smile. The smile of a man who has just received information he needed. He turns to Bill Miller at the piano. "Bill," he says, just audibly enough for the front rows to hear. "Night and Day, like we said." Bill Miller plays the opening bars of Night and Day, and Frank Sinatra sings it, perfectly, completely, without a single moment of visible distraction, and the room, which had been holding its breath, releases it in the particular rush of relief that comes when a great performer decides that what just happened is not going to interrupt the music. But the man who is watching most carefully, not Benedetto, not the 200 guests, but Jack Entrata, who has flown in from Las Vegas for reasons he will not explain to anyone, is watching Sinatra's eyes, and Jack Entrata knows. He has known Sinatra for 15 years. He has been in every room Sinatra has ever transformed, and every room that has ever misread him, and the eyes tonight, above the perfect performance, above the smile and the voice and the absolute professionalism, the eyes are somewhere else entirely. They are already in the future. The show has not yet begun. What has begun is something else. There are men who become famous, and men who become institutions. The distinction is not about the size of the fame. It is about what the fame is attached to, whether it is attached to a performance or to a principle. Frank Sinatra, in January of 1961, is an institution. He has earned this designation not through longevity alone, though he has been famous for 18 years, which is its own kind of argument, but through the specific way he has constructed his public life. He has not merely entertained people. He has insisted on certain things, and the insistence has been consistent enough, and costly enough, and principled enough, that it has accumulated into something that looks, from a certain angle, like a code. The code is not complicated. It has 3 articles. The first article: treat everyone in the room as though their dignity matters. This is not sentiment, this is practice. In a 1955 engagement in Miami, Sinatra refused to perform at a club that would not admit Sammy Davis Jr. The club was hosting his performance. The audience was sold out. He walked. The financial cost to him was not trivial. He did not announce this publicly. He simply did it and let the results speak. The second article: do not be owned. This applies to record labels, to studios, to managers, to agents, and, critically, to the men in certain rooms who believe that their particular variety of power converts everyone in their proximity into an employee. Sinatra will work with these men. He has worked with these men. He will appear at their clubs and eat at their tables and accept their hospitality and extend his own, but he will not be owned. The moment ownership is asserted, the moment the arrangement shifts from mutual accommodation to declared hierarchy, Sinatra leaves. Or, if leaving is not available, he does something else. The third article: the music comes first, not above the people. He would disagree with that formulation, but the music is the non-negotiable foundation of everything. The set is the set. The arrangement is the arrangement. The tempo is the tempo. You do not alter these for any reason except artistic ones. When Carmine Russo came backstage and said Sal wants to change the set list, he was not merely asking for a different song order. He was asking Sinatra to subordinate the music, the one area where his authority is absolute, to someone else's preference. He was asking Sinatra to acknowledge, in the most fundamental possible way, who was in charge. The answer was no. It was always going to be no. What Benedetto has done tonight, the turned back, the private conversation during the introduction, the deliberate non-acknowledgement, is the second, public version of the same demand. He has taken the backstage message and written it on the wall for 200 people to read. This man performs at my pleasure. His acknowledgement is mine to give or withhold. What Sinatra does next will be the answer to that declaration. But Sinatra's answers do not arrive in the form of confrontation. They never have. They arrive in the form of consequences, slow, precise, and entirely deniable. The show runs for 58 minutes. In those 58 minutes, Frank Sinatra performs 18 songs. He tells 4 stories, each one timed to a specific mood, each one landing exactly where he intends it to land. He brings a woman from the audience to dance during The Lady is a Tramp, a woman at table 11, near the back, who has the quality of someone who never expected to be noticed, who will describe this moment to her daughters and her daughters' daughters with the particular happiness of being genuinely seen by someone who did not need to see her. He signs 3 autographs during a brief break between sets. He speaks to the bartender. He asks the sound engineer, a man named Pete Haverstock, whether the monitor mix is working correctly. He does not speak to Salvatore Benedetto. Not once, not by implication or gesture. He does not ignore Benedetto. Ignoring is active, and active things can be seen. He simply, efficiently, comprehensively performs for every other person in the room, as though Benedetto's table is a piece of furniture. When the show ends, he takes his bow. He thanks the band. He thanks Jack Walsh, the MC. He says to the room, "This city has been good to me for a long time. I won't forget it." He looks at no one in particular when he says it. He walks off stage. Backstage, he speaks to Bill Miller for 4 minutes about 2 passages in the arrangement of The September of My Years that are not quite right. He accepts a towel from the stage manager. He pours a glass of water. He looks at his watch. It is 12:32 a.m., January 22nd, 1961. He has been off stage for 4 minutes. He picks up the backstage telephone. He dials a number he knows from memory. The phone rings once. It's Frank. The 48-hour clock does not start at midnight. It starts at 12:32 a.m. when Frank Sinatra picks up the backstage phone at the 500 Club, Atlantic City, and makes the first call. 12:32 a.m. The first call. The first person Sinatra calls is not Jilly Rizzo. Tonight, the first call is to Jack Entrata, who is, at this moment, sitting in the 500 Club bar, drinking scotch with the particular patience of a man who knew this was coming. Entrata picks up. "You saw it," Sinatra says. "I saw it. How many people in that room have I done business with?" A pause while Entrata calculates. He is, among his many qualities, a man of precise social accounting. Directly, 14, maybe 15, people from the industry, the union men. Giordano from the IATSE, and Pellegrino from the musicians local. Pellegrino's here? In the back. He came up from Philadelphia for the night. A pause. "Jack," Sinatra says, "is there a musicians local here in Atlantic City?" "Of course. And the 500 Club uses union musicians?" "Has to." AGVA contracts, the whole, and when does Benedetto's regular entertainment contract renew? The quality of the silence that follows this question is the quality of a man recognizing the shape of something larger than he expected. "Frank, when, Jack?" "March 1st. "And who negotiates those contracts?" "The club goes through an agent, a booking agent in New York named Lenny Wasserman." "Yes, I know Lenny," Sinatra says. And in the way he says it, Entrata understands, not as a threat, not as a plan announced, but as a simple geographic statement. "I know the territory. I know who is where. I know which roads connect to which other roads." "Frank, what are you going to do?" "Nothing," Sinatra says. And he means it in a precise sense. He is not going to do anything. He is going to make phone calls. He is going to speak to people he knows. He is going to have conversations about things that are each, individually, entirely unrelated to Salvatore Benedetto. And the aggregate of those conversations, the sum total of Frank Sinatra activating the web of genuine relationship that he has spent 18 years building, one real connection at a time, will produce a result that looks, from the outside, like nothing more than the natural consequences of being a man who has made himself inconvenient to people with options. "I'm going to make a few calls," Sinatra says. "Get some sleep, Jack." He hangs up. He looks at the clock. 12:38 a.m. He makes the second call. 12:38 a.m. The second call. Anthony Pellegrino is the president of the American Federation of Musicians, Local 77, the Philadelphia local, which covers South Jersey, which covers Atlantic City. He is 53 years old. He has been running Local 77 for 9 years, with the careful, methodical competence of a man who understands that a union is only as strong as its people's trust in it. He is not a political man in the grand sense. He is a labor man, a man who cares about contracts and pay scales and working conditions and the specific dignity of musicians, who are among the most consistently exploited workers in any field. He is in the back of the 500 Club bar because he came to Atlantic City for a contract review meeting in the morning, and because Jack Entrata, who knows everyone, mentioned that Sinatra was performing tonight, and because Pellegrino has been a Sinatra fan since 1943. When his phone rings, the bar phone, because Entrata has the number, he picks it up. "Anthony," Sinatra says, "you're here tonight." "In the back." "Great show, Frank." "Thank you. Anthony, I want to ask you something. Anything. The 500 Club, their musicians' contract. How's it look?" A pause. "It's adequate, not great. The sidemen have been working under a 1957 rate that never got renegotiated properly. We've been meaning to address it. March is coming. Contract renewal season, yes. You should address it," Sinatra says. "I've always believed the musicians in Atlantic City deserve proper representation. The sidemen especially. Frank, I mean it, Anthony. It's long overdue, and if there's anything I can do, any benefit, any public statement of support, you let me know." A pause. "I appreciate that, Frank. Get some sleep. Great seeing you." He hangs up. 12:44 a.m. He makes the third call. 12:44 a.m. The third call. Lenny Wasserman runs a mid-size booking agency in New York. He books entertainment for clubs and hotels and private events throughout the Northeast, with a particular concentration in New Jersey, where his relationships with venue owners span 3 decades. He is one of those essential, invisible men of the entertainment industry, not famous, not glamorous, but consequent. He books the acts, he sets the terms, he decides in a practical and ongoing way which performers work which rooms and at what price. He has been Sinatra's informal first call for New Jersey bookings since 1954. He is also, and this is where the geography becomes interesting, the booking agent for the 500 Club's entertainment program, which he has managed since 1959. He picks up his home phone at 12:44 a.m. in the way of a man who knows that when the phone rings at this hour, it is generally about something important. "Lenny, it's Frank. Frank, how was the show? Good crowd, good night." A pause. "Lenny, I want to ask you something personal, of course. I'm going to be doing some dates in the spring, March through May, possibly into June. I'm looking at the East Coast, New York, obviously, and I'd been thinking about Atlantic City. Atlantic City would be great for you. There are 3 good venues, not the 500 Club," Sinatra says, simply, without explanation. A pause. "Okay. Someplace that operates right, someplace that understands what it means to have proper entertainment. I can find you the right room, Frank. Absolutely. I know you can. I trust your judgment." He hangs up. 12:51 a.m. Lenny Wasserman sits in his bedroom in New York City, holding the phone, and he thinks about what he has just heard. Frank Sinatra will not play the 500 Club. Frank Sinatra wants somewhere that operates right. Lenny Wasserman has been in this business for 30 years. He does not need a diagram. He also, at this moment, is the booking agent for the 500 Club. This creates not a conflict exactly, but a tension. An awareness that these 2 professional relationships, which have coexisted comfortably for years, are now occupying the same conceptual space in a way that will require a decision. Lenny Wasserman will take 3 days to make that decision. The outcome is not predetermined. Sinatra is not calling in a debt or making a threat. He is simply, by communicating his preference, creating a situation in which Lenny must decide what kind of businessman he wants to be. Does he prefer to book acts for a room that Frank Sinatra won't play? Or does he prefer to book acts for a room that Frank Sinatra will play? The mathematics of that choice are not complicated. Mathematics of that choice are not complicated. Mio 4 a.m. The 4th call. The 4th call goes to a man named Charlie Fischetti, not a mob man, not a political man, but something more useful in this specific context, a newspaper man. Charlie Fischetti is the entertainment editor of the Atlantic City Press, the city's primary daily paper, a column that runs 3 times a week and that is read with genuine attention by the people who actually run the city's entertainment economy. Charlie and Sinatra have known each other since 1955. Sinatra performed at a benefit for Charlie's newspaper's Journalism Scholarship Fund in 1958, a night that is still talked about in Atlantic City, that still appears on the walls of the press's conference room in a framed photograph. "Charlie, I'm sorry to call late. For you, never. What is it?" "I want to write a piece," Sinatra says, "about musicians, about the sidemen who work the Atlantic City clubs. I want to say something public about how these guys deserve proper contracts, proper pay, the kind of treatment that recognizes what they contribute." A pause. "Frank, yes, that's a story. Can you run it? I'll give you the quotes. I'll give you whatever you need." "When?" "Soon as you want it." "I can run it Thursday." "Thursday is good." He hangs up. 1:09 a.m. The piece will run in the Atlantic City Press on Thursday, January 26th. It will feature quotes from Sinatra about the working conditions of club musicians, about the importance of union contracts, about the obligation of venue owners to treat their entertainment staff, musicians, stagehands, sound technicians, with the respect owed to skilled professionals. It will be, by all surface appearances, a completely unrelated piece of entertainment journalism. It will be read, with great care, by Anthony Pellegrino of AFM Local 77, and by Lenny Wasserman, who will call Pellegrino that same day to discuss the timing of the 500 Club's contract renewal, and by Jack Entrata, who will send a copy to Carl Cohen at the Sands, with a brief note that says simply, "He's doing it again." 12:44 a.m. The 3rd call. Lenny Wasserman runs a mid-size booking agency in New York. He books entertainment for clubs and hotels and private events throughout the Northeast, with a particular concentration in New Jersey, where his relationships with venue owners span 3 decades. He is one of those essential, invisible men of the entertainment industry. Not famous, not glamorous, but consequent. He books the acts, he sets the terms, he decides in a practical and ongoing way which performers work which rooms and at what price. He has been Sinatra's informal first call for New Jersey bookings since 1954. He is also, and this is where the geography becomes interesting, the booking agent for the 500 Club's entertainment program, which he has managed since 1959. He picks up his home phone at 12:44 a.m. in the way of a man who knows that when the phone rings at this hour, it is generally about something important. "Lenny, it's Frank. Frank, how was the show? Good crowd, good night." A pause. "Lenny, I want to ask you something personal, of course. I'm going to be doing some dates in the spring, March through May, possibly into June. I'm looking at the East Coast, New York, obviously, and I'd been thinking about Atlantic City. Atlantic City would be great for you. There are 3 good venues, not the 500 Club," Sinatra says, simply, without explanation. A pause. "Okay. Someplace that operates right, someplace that understands what it means to have proper entertainment. I can find you the right room, Frank. Absolutely. I know you can. I trust your judgment." He hangs up. 12:51 a.m. Lenny Wasserman sits in his bedroom in New York City, holding the phone, and he thinks about what he has just heard. Frank Sinatra will not play the 500 Club. Frank Sinatra wants somewhere that operates right. Lenny Wasserman has been in this business for 30 years. He does not need a diagram. He also, at this moment, is the booking agent for the 500 Club. This creates not a conflict exactly, but a tension. An awareness that these 2 professional relationships, which have coexisted comfortably for years, are now occupying the same conceptual space in a way that will require a decision. Lenny Wasserman will take 3 days to make that decision. The outcome is not predetermined. Sinatra is not calling in a debt or making a threat. He is simply, by communicating his preference, creating a situation in which Lenny must decide what kind of businessman he wants to be. Does he prefer to book acts for a room that Frank Sinatra won't play? Or does he prefer to book acts for a room that Frank Sinatra will play? The mathematics of that choice are not complicated. Mathematics of that choice are not complicated. Mio 4 a.m. The 4th call. The 4th call goes to a man named Charlie Fischetti, not a mob man, not a political man, but something more useful in this specific context, a newspaper man. Charlie Fischetti is the entertainment editor of the Atlantic City Press, the city's primary daily paper, a column that runs 3 times a week and that is read with genuine attention by the people who actually run the city's entertainment economy. Charlie and Sinatra have known each other since 1955. Sinatra performed at a benefit for Charlie's newspaper's Journalism Scholarship Fund in 1958, a night that is still talked about in Atlantic City, that still appears on the walls of the press's conference room in a framed photograph. "Charlie, I'm sorry to call late. For you, never. What is it?" "I want to write a piece," Sinatra says, "about musicians, about the sidemen who work the Atlantic City clubs. I want to say something public about how these guys deserve proper contracts, proper pay, the kind of treatment that recognizes what they contribute." A pause. "Frank, yes, that's a story. Can you run it? I'll give you the quotes. I'll give you whatever you need." "When?" "Soon as you want it." "I can run it Thursday." "Thursday is good." He hangs up. 1:09 a.m. The piece will run in the Atlantic City Press on Thursday, January 26th. It will feature quotes from Sinatra about the working conditions of club musicians, about the importance of union contracts, about the obligation of venue owners to treat their entertainment staff, musicians, stagehands, sound technicians, with the respect owed to skilled professionals. It will be, by all surface appearances, a completely unrelated piece of entertainment journalism. It will be read, with great care, by Anthony Pellegrino of AFM Local 77, and by Lenny Wasserman, who will call Pellegrino that same day to discuss the timing of the 500 Club's contract renewal, and by Jack Entrata, who will send a copy to Carl Cohen at the Sands, with a brief note that says simply, "He's doing it again." What happens over the next 48 hours is not dramatic. It is not the kind of story that translates into film scenes with raised voices and slammed doors and men in suits delivering ultimatums in parking garages. It is, instead, the quiet unraveling of the professional infrastructure that the 500 Club depends on to remain an enterprise worth having. Not a criminal infrastructure, not a violent one, but the ordinary commercial infrastructure of bookings and contracts and media relationships and the specific reputation that allows a room to attract the talent that makes it relevant. On January 23rd, Lenny Wasserman calls 3 of the acts he has been managing for the 500 Club's spring calendar, 2 comedians and a band leader, and has frank conversations about their availability. All 3, it turns out, are reviewing their schedules. 2 have received expressions of interest from other Atlantic City venues. 1 has been contacted by Jack Entratta's office about a Las Vegas date that would conflict with the 500 Club spring engagement. None of this is manufactured or coordinated. It is simply the natural consequence of a booking agent who is rethinking his relationship with a particular venue, having naturally occurring conversations with the performers he represents. On January 24th, the Atlantic City Press publishes a brief news item, unrelated to Charlie Fichetti's forthcoming column, reporting that AFM Local 77 has formally requested a contract review of 3 Atlantic City venues, including the 500 Club. This is a public record item. The union has simply exercised its contractual right to request a review before the March renewal period. The item is 4 column inches on the entertainment page. Most readers don't notice it. The entertainment industry people in Atlantic City notice it. When a union files a formal contract review request, it means, in the practical language of entertainment management, that booking into that venue for the spring may involve complications. It means that agents, when advising their clients, will note the review as a potential scheduling risk. It is a small asterisk, but asterisks in entertainment contracts tend to accumulate. On January 25th, the Atlantic City Press runs Charlie Fichetti's column. Sinatra is quoted at length, passionately, specifically, about musicians' rights, about the obligation of club owners to honor fair labor standards, about the distinction between venues that genuinely respect their performers and venues that treat entertainment as a commodity. He does not name any venue. He does not need to. The column runs adjacent to the news item from the previous day. In a city where everyone in the industry reads the same paper, this proximity is its own communication. By the end of January 25th, the 500 Club's spring entertainment calendar, which had been full 3 days ago, has developed 4 vacancies. Benedetto receives his first full accounting of the situation on the morning of January 25th, in a meeting with his club manager Richard Torino and his attorney. The accounting covers 4 cancelled or at-risk spring bookings, a union contract review that will likely result in a 20 to 25% wage increase demand for the club's musicians, a booking agent who is no longer responsive to new business, and a newspaper column that, while naming no one, creates a public context in which the 500 Club's labor practices are now subject to public comparison. None of this is illegal. None of this can be attributed to any single person. None of this constitutes a threat or a conspiracy. Every individual element has a completely plausible, independent explanation. And yet, Benedetto asks Richard Torino a direct question. Who did I piss off? Richard Torino, who runs the 500 Club and who was in the room on Saturday night, says, "You turned your back while Sinatra was being introduced." The room is quiet. "He did this," Benedetto says, "not as a question. I don't know that he did anything," Torino says carefully. "I know that things started moving the day after." Benedetto stares at the table for a long moment. "He didn't make a single phone call about me," Benedetto says finally. "Did he? Not that anyone can show. He just stopped making phone calls for me." A longer silence. "That's it," Benedetto says. "He just stopped." This is the precise and devastating insight that it takes Salvatore Benedetto, 30 years of professional experience and genuine intelligence, approximately 72 hours to arrive at. And once he arrives at it, he cannot unarrive. Because you cannot fight an absence. You cannot threaten a man for not calling his friends on your behalf. You cannot take to a court the fact that someone has ceased to recommend your establishment to people they know. The entire operation is impeccable, not because it was designed to be impeccable, though it was, but because at its core it is simply the withdrawal of goodwill, which is entirely and completely a man's right to withdraw for any reason or no reason. Frank Sinatra has not done anything to Salvatore Benedetto. He has simply stopped doing things for him, stopped being a presence in his professional world, stopped being a recommender and an endorser and an attractor of the professional relationships that make a room worth having. And without that, without the specific warmth that Sinatra's genuine investment in a room creates, the 500 Club is just a room, and rooms in January 1961 Atlantic City are available in considerable supply. January 27th, 1961, 2 p.m. A private room at the Ritz-Carlton, Atlantic City. The meeting is requested by Benedetto. It is arranged through intermediaries, not Carmine Russo this time, but a more senior member of Benedetto's operation, a man named Vincent Aiello, who serves as the organization's primary interface with the legitimate business world. Vincent calls Jack Entrata in Las Vegas. Jack calls Sinatra. Sinatra agrees to the meeting. He arrives at the Ritz at 2 p.m., alone. He is in a dark suit, no tie. He orders coffee. He sits at the table in the private room and waits. Benedetto arrives 7 minutes late, not rudely late, but late in the way of powerful men who want to make the point of the dynamic without making it crudely. He has with him only Vincent Aiello, who stands near the door. Benedetto sits. He looks at Sinatra. They have met before, 3 times, briefly, at the 500 Club over the years. They have not had a conversation of any depth. Benedetto has always been the host and Sinatra the performer, and between those roles there is, in Benedetto's world, a clear hierarchy. He is not sure, sitting here, that the hierarchy is as clear as he thought. "Mr. Sinatra," Benedetto says, "I appreciate you meeting with me." "Of course," Sinatra says. A pause. "I think we may have started the new year on the wrong foot." "Do you think so?" Sinatra says, not a question. Not an accusation, simply a consideration. "Saturday night. I want to apologize for any—" "Sam," Sinatra sets down his coffee cup. He looks at Benedetto directly. He uses the name with the specific familiarity of a man who has decided that formality is not the register this conversation requires. "I'm going to be honest with you, because I think you're a man who prefers honesty." Benedetto waits. "I don't work for you. I've never worked for you. I have performed at your club on 3 occasions as a professional courtesy that I was happy to extend, and I remain happy to extend it, under certain conditions." "What conditions?" "Treat the musicians right. When a man is introduced in your room, whether it's me or the lowest comedian on the circuit, you stand up. You acknowledge him. Not for him, for the room, for the people in it, because the room is watching what you do, and the room learns from it." A pause. "And the other thing, go ahead." "The set list is the set list." Benedetto looks at him for a long moment. Then, and this is the moment that Vincent Aiello, standing by the door, will remember for the rest of his life, Benedetto does something that does not come naturally to him, that costs him something measurable, that he will not explain or justify to anyone afterward. He nods. Not a large nod. Not an elaborate one. The small, specific nod of a man who has recalculated and arrived at a number that is different from the one he started with. "The musician's contract will be renegotiated fairly," Benedetto says, "before March." "Good. And the bookings? Talk to Lenny Wasserman. He handles my schedule." Another pause. "Will you come back to the 500 Club?" Benedetto asks. Sinatra picks up his coffee. He looks at Benedetto over the rim of the cup. He takes a sip. He sets it down. "Yes," he says. "When the room is right, I'll come back." February 14th, 1961. Valentine's Day. The American Federation of Musicians, Local 77, and the 500 Club signed a revised labor contract. The new terms included a 22% wage increase for all club musicians, improved overtime provisions, and a health benefit contribution that the club had previously refused to consider. The contract was signed in a brief ceremony attended by Anthony Pellegrino and Richard Torino. There were no photographs. It was not a newsworthy event by any public measure. For the 11 musicians who played regular engagements at the 500 Club, it meant an average of $63 additional per month. This was, in 1961 dollars, a meaningful sum. It was the difference, for several of them, between a working life that was economically sustainable and one that was not. 2 of those musicians had families, 3 had mothers they were supporting, 1 was putting a son through school. None of them knew that their contract revision had anything to do with Frank Sinatra. The union negotiated it. The club agreed to it. The machinery of labor relations operated as it was designed to operate. But the machinery had been activated. And it had been activated by a man who stood in a service corridor at the 500 Club and looked at a 24-year-old waiter being told what he was worth and decided, in the particular quiet of his most decisive thinking, that the room needed to be corrected, not punished, corrected. This is a distinction that matters enormously. Punishment is about the punisher. Correction is about the room. February 14th, 1961, Valentine's Day. The American Federation of Musicians, Local 77, and the 500 Club signed a revised labor contract. The new terms included a 22% wage increase for all club musicians, improved overtime provisions, and a health benefit contribution that the club had previously refused to consider. The contract was signed in a brief ceremony attended by Anthony Pellegrino and Richard Torino. There were no photographs. It was not a newsworthy event by any public measure. For the 11 musicians who played regular engagements at the 500 Club, it meant an average of $63 additional per month. This was, in 1961 dollars, a meaningful sum. It was the difference, for several of them, between a working life that was economically sustainable and one that was not. 2 of those musicians had families, 3 had mothers they were supporting, 1 was putting a son through school. None of them knew that their contract revision had anything to do with Frank Sinatra. The union negotiated it. The club agreed to it. The machinery of labor relations operated as it was designed to operate. But the machinery had been activated. And it had been activated by a man who stood in a service corridor at the 500 Club and looked at a 24-year-old waiter being told what he was worth and decided, in the particular quiet of his most decisive thinking, that the room needed to be corrected, not punished, corrected. This is a distinction that matters enormously. Punishment is about the punisher. Correction is about the room. There are easier ways to tell this story. You could tell it as a mob story, a tale of power and territory and the specific violence of men who measure respect in visible gestures. There is material for that story. Benedetto is a real force in a real world. The stakes in his professional universe are genuine. But that is not what happened. What happened is more interesting and more instructive than a mob story. What happened is a story about the 2 kinds of power that exist in every room and the persistent, catastrophic failure of one kind to understand the other. Benedetto's power is vertical. It runs downward from him, through his organization, through his relationships with institutions he has purchased or cultivated, through the specific mechanisms of enforcement that allow him to translate his decisions into outcomes. It is real power. It has worked for 30 years. It continues to work in every context where the people involved operate within the system he has built. Sinatra's power is horizontal. It runs outward, through genuine relationship, through mutual interest and mutual respect, and the specific warmth of a man who has spent 18 years treating every person he encounters as though their story matters. It does not require hierarchy. It does not require fear. It operates on the basis of affection and trust, which are the 2 most durable forces in any professional relationship over time. When Benedetto deployed his vertical power against Sinatra, when he made the backstage demand and then made the public gesture of dismissal, He was operating within a system he understood perfectly. He was establishing hierarchy. He was reminding everyone in the room of the order of things. He forgot that Sinatra's power did not move vertically. It had no hierarchy to establish. It simply radiated outward, in every direction simultaneously, connecting to every other node in the network. Union men, booking agents, newspaper columnists, musicians, sound engineers, club workers, and those connections were not the result of obligation or fear. They were the result of being Frank Sinatra, of being a man who stops in a corridor to ask a stagehand his name, of being a man who tips the musicians not because someone is watching, but because they played well, of being a man who, when a mob boss turns his back during an introduction, does not respond with anger or aggression or dramatic confrontation, but simply turns to his piano player and says, "Night and day," like we said, and then makes 3 phone calls. People who were present at the 500 Club on January 21, 1961, and who have been asked about it in the years since, tend to describe the show as one of the finest performances they ever saw. They remember the songs. They remember a story about Ava Gardner that they have never quite been able to reconstruct entirely, but that made them laugh until they couldn't breathe. They remember a woman being brought to dance. What they don't know, what most of them never knew, is that the 50-minute show was also, simultaneously, the 50-minute interval in which Frank Sinatra did his most important work of the evening. Because by the time he walked off stage at 12:32 a.m., he had decided everything. He had already, in the particular way of his most precise thinking, mapped the geography of what needed to happen. He had already identified the leverage points, not the destructive leverage of men who wish to harm, but the constructive leverage of a man who wishes to correct. The 50 minutes of the show were the 50 minutes of the plan. The calls afterward were execution. This is the thing about great performers, the ones who are not merely great at their art, but great in the full sense of the word. They are never only doing one thing at a time. When Frank Sinatra stands at a microphone, he is performing, yes. He is giving everything he has to the music, yes. But he is also watching. He is reading the room. He is taking inventory. He is counting, in the back of the part of his mind that runs parallel to the music, everything that needs to be counted. By the time Night and Day was over, he knew exactly what he would do and exactly how he would do it. By the time the show ended, the arithmetic was complete. He only needed the telephone. Salvatore Benedetto continued to operate in Philadelphia and South Jersey until his indictment in 1967 on racketeering charges. He was convicted in 1969. He served 11 years in federal prison. He was released in 1980 and lived quietly until his death in 1988. He never operated another entertainment venue. The 500 Club continued under Richard Torino's management until 1973, when it was sold and converted into a banquet facility. Anthony Pellegrino served as president of AFM Local 77 until his retirement in 1971. Under his tenure, the local's contracts with Atlantic City venues were among the best compensated in the Northeast. Lenny Wasserman's booking agency expanded significantly in the 1960s. He represented several major acts through the decade. The 500 Club was no longer on his client list after January 1961. Raymond Torres, the stagehand in the corridor, completed his community college degree in 1963. He went on to work in theatrical production management in Philadelphia for 30 years. Frank Sinatra returned to the 500 Club 2 more times, in April 1961 and September 1962. Both times, the musicians were paid fairly. Both times, the center table stood for the introduction. He was never called a singer there again. There are men who respond to disrespect with violence. There are men who respond to disrespect with public confrontation. There are men who respond to disrespect with legal process. Frank Sinatra responded to disrespect by performing for 50 minutes without a single missed note, and then making 3 phone calls from a backstage telephone at 1 in the morning. By morning, the machinery had begun. By the end of the week, the correction had been made. By February, 11 musicians had a fair contract. By April, the center table stood up. Nobody was hurt. Nobody was threatened. Nobody broke a single law. This is what separates the powerful from the merely strong. The powerful do not need to destroy what they are correcting. They simply need to make the correction. The room was wrong. Sinatra made it right. That is all. That is everything.